Mr. Chairman.
Kamwalchit Singh Bakshi.
I move the question be now put.
Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable David Cummins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if I could make a somewhat technical contribution, sir, pointing out the structure of clause 98B2, which specifies that joint ministers must ensure that the number of funded places available in emergency housing each year is not less than 8,000. Also to draw to the House's attention in section 12, inserting the new section 72A on income-related rents. Again, the Principal Act amended inserts a quantitative target of a further 1,000 houses a year. I'd like to draw the distinction between that approach of inserting the number in the primary legislation versus inserting an enabling power to allow those numbers to be dealt with by ministerial action through an order in council, i.e. regulation-making power. Mr. Speaker, I think this is an important point because, frankly, New Zealanders have given up trusting this government. They would not want to see in an amendment to this a power delegated to a minister or indeed to the Cabinet through the Order in Council process that was not brought back to this House because, sir, the track record of the current government in failing to meet the needs of everyday New Zealanders has been appalling. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to concur with recent speakers who have said that this is not only a very practical crisis of children living in cars or enduring the cold of winter or living in, at best, substandard, wet, damp accommodation, but it is a moral crisis, sir. It's a very practical crisis. If a child is homeless, the child cannot learn. It will have lifetime proclivity to disease. It will not develop its learning abilities. Its employment opportunities will be constrained. It is much more likely to end up in the prison system or the mental health system, which in turn will be a burden on society. And so the irony of the current government, which has utterly failed to address the housing crisis, but speaks in this year's budget of the social investment approach, isn't it about time we had some social investment in social housing?
Will resume a seat. As I indicated to previously, this was a marginal call and as to scope, and therefore will be strictly enforced as to relevance. And so members cannot wander all over the park on it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I take your point, which is why my comments were embedded within the quantification of clause 98B and 72A and related that, sir, as you recall, to the question of the reliability of the policy around homelessness. But sir, let me touch on another clause, which is clause 98C, which in subclause 1 quite specifically refers to the need for a plan to end homelessness. Now, I think the wording here is really important because it doesn't talk about a plan to mitigate homelessness or a plan to reduce homelessness. It talks about a plan to end homelessness. And when combined with those rigid quantitative requirements in the bill as the part inserts, I think the House can infer that this is a matter where the cost-benefit of the intervention is so obvious over the lifetime of the child concerned that there is no excuse for homelessness. There is no non-zero amount of homelessness which should be acceptable, or in the language of social investment, where it's not worth investing to rid the country of it, which is why clause B in 98C, or subclause B, talks about ending, not just mitigating. Sorry, that's subclause 1. In subclause 2, subclause A, we're required to consider whether the official definition of homelessness needs updating and recommending accordingly. Sir, this is the one subclause where I'm not sure I am comfortable with the drafting, and that's because this government has had a tendency to use data and the updating of methodologies to political effect. But I take it you don't want examples in this debate of that. I think we all know many of them. In the following subclause, assess evidence of the current scale of homelessness, whether it is changing. I think the wording could also have said by how much it's changing, because it's clear to all New Zealanders that the homelessness problem is getting worse, exponentially worse, sir, all over the country.
Chair.
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 David.